All right, Beverly. So thank you so much for joining us. So we're going to do your story today. Now, you started weight training when you were 67?
68.
68. That's the first time that we met.
Yes.
Okay. And that was your first time really working with weights
Yes.
ever in your life, right? Pretty
Well,
much.
like I told you before, I started with silver sneakers, and
Oh,
I
yeah.
absolutely loved your response to that. So my little 8-pound weights and silver sneakers don't count.
Yeah, so I was like, well, our goal is to get you out of silver sneakers, right? And then never go back to silver sneakers. Not there's anything wrong with silver sneakers, right? But we want to progress past that, okay, and be able to do things that you never thought you'd be able to do. Now, when you started weight training, right, did you imagine that you would be into this? Because now it's what, 5 or 6 years later. Did you ever think you would still be doing this?
No, I did not. Since my sister and her friends were doing it, and I just moved back to town, I thought, well, this will be a good way for me to do something good for myself and put myself out there in a new place.
In a new place.
Yeah.
Now, yeah, and when you first started, like I remember certain things, I was like, oh, we saw big compensations, when you were doing some stuff because your body like had weaknesses, right? So your push-ups were
Absolutely.
crooked, but you hung in there. You hung in there the whole way, right? And what we're going to talk about are because a lot of people think, why should I start now? What's the point? Right? So when you think back to how you were before, to think back now where you are today and the things that you're doing, I mean, obviously you can answer this question and say, yes, of course I'm able to do more now. Okay, because now you're what, 72 or 73?
73 next week.
73 next week. Okay. Would you say that your, quality of life in terms of being active and involved with things have improved over these 5 or 6 years?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I go from the early years in my life to always concentrating on what the scale said and
Mm-hmm.
about weight. And I couldn't get skinny enough. And I was back and forth and yo-yo and had a little dysmorphic view of
Mm-hmm.
what I looked like in pictures and in the mirror. And it was all about being thin, and it was not about being healthy. And
Yes.
one of the things that when I started with you, it was the total package as far as being slim and being strong and being healthy.
Yeah.
So it was a total mind shift for me.
Yes, instead of focusing on just the lowest number on the scale possible,
Exactly.
which is so defeating over time. So now talking about that, so we're going to go back to a picture that you had shared with me. Okay. So, and tell us about what was going on at this time.
I was about 28 years old, and I was going through a divorce, and it was a devastating divorce for me. And I smoked cigarettes and drank Pepsi and did not eat, and nothing tasted good. I just had no appetite, and just got this skinny. But I have to say that when I looked in the mirror back in those days, I did not see the person that you see on this picture. I saw somebody that was healthy and skinny and was looking good. So what I saw in that picture is not what I see in that picture today.
Isn't that amazing how your perception changes? Now, this happens to women a lot with divorce. I'll see women a lot of times shed a ton of weight in a divorce. Even myself, when I got divorced, I weighed 112 pounds. When I look back at those pictures, today I'm 100 and anywhere between 125, 130. When I look back at those 112-pound pictures, I looked like I was sick,
Mm-hmm.
you know, but at the time I was like, I mean, the weight just came off of me so fast. Part of that acceleration in adrenal activity from trauma and, stress and everything. So that does happen. But yeah, so when you look at that picture today, you don't see thin, you see,
Just emaciated.
yeah, Isn't that, yeah, but at the time, right, when people are searching for, you can never be thin enough, right? At the time, you probably felt like, okay, I'm finally skinny. Did you feel that
Exactly.
way? Yeah. And that is such a distorted perception, of people, like you said, somewhat of a little bit of body dysmorphia. So now when I'm going to progress through to some other pictures, let's see, I want to go to this one. Can you see that picture? Let's see.
I'm still seeing the
Okay,
original.
I'm going to change here.
That,
Okay, so this is your son that you're with.
yes.
Okay,
All grown
and
up.
yeah, all
Same little,
grown up.
same little baby from the first picture. And
Right.
this was probably I want to think maybe around the time he turned 38, 39, or 40, somewhere in there, because I'd gotten very heavy.
Mm-hmm.
And the things that were going on in my life then were my son was a drug addicted. And although he looks fine in this picture, and my parents were one in skilled nursing, one in assisted living. I had a job that I hated. And, my life was just stressful again. But this time I just let go. I just thought I just don't have what it takes to watch every calorie and that kind of thing and just let go. So this is what I look like when I'm totally out of control the other way. I got up to about 152 pounds.
152.
Just
Yeah.
makes me nauseous to say that.
Isn't that, and there's a difference between how your body responds with like that acute stress, like a divorce, where in this picture where you are with chronic stress, like what you said, having your parents, so you were the sandwich generation, you were taking care of your parents on one end, dealing with your son on the other end, and, being in a family of addiction that has its own, type of effect on life. Okay. And you're trying to cope, but you can't cope. So you're juggling all these plates at one time. Okay. And the result is, chronic stress, weight gain, trying to cope, trying to manage. Yes. And you were married now, your second time at this point,
yes,
right?
yes.
Yeah.
And I've been married now 43 years.
Right. Congratulations. Yes. Yeah. So this is a completely different person from the other person, and even from today. So now, and then tell me about, I'm going to bring up another picture. Let me see. I'm going to bring up this one, which I didn't know here. Okay. Is this your family lake?
Ed's father was one of the co-founders of the Central Florida Research Park, and
Okay.
they named a lake after him. And so on a trip to Florida, 8 or so years ago, we found it and got out and took pictures. So that's the story behind that.
That's the story behind that. Now, how long ago was this picture?
I would say this was maybe about 8 years ago.
Okay, so it looks like you lost some weight from that last picture,
Yes.
right? Okay. Yes. And this is when, were you doing, I think you said you were doing Weight Watch. Were you doing Weight Watchers at one point?
Oh, no. I did Weight Watchers. I did the Diet Center.
The Diet Center?
I took diet pills that I shouldn't have done because that made me, crazy at one time. And this was all way back when I wasn't this big, and I was still obsessing over skinny.
Skinny.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's what people do, is they just figure that they have to do these starvation techniques, right, to achieve the body size that they want. And I call them traumatic dieting, right? Traumatic dieting. And we should not have to go through anything traumatizing to, achieve goals. It shouldn't feel like that. Okay. Yeah. But, now, yes, learning some new things, so then we come to, so I'm going to change another picture. Okay. And then we see that you are now here. Okay. A very different person on that right-hand side.
Absolutely.
Okay. Very different person. So weight training for you. So now what would you say that your weight is approximately now?
135.
135 pounds.
Yes.
Now, do you feel like, okay, I'm a much smaller individual, even though the scale may not say 115 pounds? There's people that have a perception, right, that the scale has to be that lowest number, like when we were prepubescent in high school, okay? And I'm like, no, you can kiss that number goodbye, right? But what we have to do now is change the composition of your body. So now you're 130, 35 pounds, you range between, right? And now obviously size is a much smaller size.
Well, and I have to say that if you had told me 15 or 20 years ago that 135 is what I would weigh, I would have said, I will never let myself weigh 135 pounds. Just never let that happen again.
You would never, yeah.
And now I'm satisfied. You know, I can always lose 3 or 4 more, but you know, I'm at a point now where, and like I told you in the very beginning, that my goal in sticking with this is to get strong.
Yes.
You know, that's more than losing weight or having the perfect figure. It's about being strong and being able to know that I've got about 20 more years that I want to be able to be mobile and to enjoy life and go where I want to go without, you know, everything creaking and moaning and groaning and not being strong. So
and not being strong. Yeah.
Strong.
Yeah. So now you are able to, and when I tell people about you and I'm like, well, you know, people say, am I ever going to get to this point? And I was like, well, yeah, you stay in the game long enough, you're going to be able to get to, right? And Beverly, you know, you can deadlift, you know, we were getting up to the 100 to 135 pound range, right? With your deadlifts, right? Your hip thrusts, right? You're up there in those high ranges now. Now you had minor setback, right? You had something done with your spine because you had a little bit of a disc issue.
Yes.
Okay. But even with little setbacks, because setbacks scare people, okay, they push them back in the corner, right? And they say, oh, I don't think I should do this because, you know, I had a setback. What would you say to somebody about that?
Well, you know, you can't come back the first week after a setback and immediately be back where you were before. You have to step back and maybe not completely start over, but to work your way back to where you were. And I was able to do that.
You were able to do that.
Determination, because there were some times that I think, oh, maybe I'm pushing it too hard, but that's the way I did it.
Now, when because you still have a very close friend circle from where you were years ago, right? And when you see yourself and you see your friends, what is one of the big differences that you notice?
Well, I noticed that a lot of them have gotten to be old.
Okay, tell me about that.
Well, you know, that it's all about the, you know, what hurts and what needs fixing, and they're having knees done and hips done, and these are college friends that, tend to say that, and when we get together for reunions and everything. And you know, most people can't tell a difference in me unless they see me in a tank top or shorts. You know, in my regular clothes, most of the time, you know, it's not evident of what I've done.
Right.
But I know that I'm far ahead of lots of my friends as far as strength and health.
Now, do they think that you are just like a unique human being, that this is beyond them? Or do you think that they maybe just feel like it's too late to start, why bother? What do you think their perception is?
I think probably a little bit of both, but you know, that's one of the little pieces of advice that I would tell the younger ladies in our tribe is, you know, it's never too late to start. And if I had anything to say, it would be, I wish I'd started sooner.
You wish you'd started sooner.
Yeah, I wish I'd started sooner.
Now, do you obsess about the scale and the weight and the food and the this and the that anymore? Or do you feel like, okay, what's your main focus? Like, so what do you think about now when you look at your plate? What's the difference between now and like the pictures before?
Well, I concentrate on getting enough protein.
Mm-hmm.
And, in morning, noon, and night, it's how much protein have I gotten in today?
Mm-hmm.
I
Yes.
don't obsess about counting carbs or that kind of thing. If I want a little bit of it, I'll eat a little bit of it. But the only thing I really do concentrate on is the protein.
Getting in enough
It's
protein.
hard to get it all in, but I try to get, because that's what's going to keep me strong.
It is, and it's what's going to keep you from totally avoiding sarcopenia, which I would say you have avoided. So sarcopenia is muscle wasting, right?
Right.
And in order to maintain our levels of lean mass, we really have to eat at least our body weight in protein. Okay, so you're getting in about how many? 120, 130 grams a day.
Yeah,
Yes.
I can't seem to get more than 130 without doing drastic stuff.
It's hard. It's challenging to get in an extra amount, but that is what prevents, especially muscle wasting, and that's one of the things that when people get older and they lose muscle faster and faster, and then they start to have aches and pains. So they sit down more. And then the more they sit, the more sedentary they become. The more sedentary become, the more they lose lean mass. And it just becomes a vicious cycle, right? So then they start to work out and then they have pain. So if they have pain, they avoid it, when really what it is, finding, a way to get started that's not going to obviously be painful. So did you have, in the past, do you think that you had a type of an eating disorder in the past? Or
Probably
disordered?
So.
Yeah.
Probably so. I mean, I think about the diet pills that I took and how they kept me awake at night, and it took away the appetite, but it took away the sleep too. And I thought, looking back on that was a disorder, and that always seeing a fat person or a heavy person when I really wasn't heavy was a disorder. I don't know whether it's an eating disorder or just a
yes, it was a kind of like not a necessarily diagnosed eating disorder, but maybe disordered eating. So there is a difference. Yeah. Now you went and you work now for the USO, right?
Well, I haven't been in since February, since the USO has shut down.
But for COVID, yeah. So,
but I did up until then. My main volunteer job is I'm a courier with the organization called Be the Match.
Be the Match, that's right.
And I travel from donor center to the transplant center and deliver stem cells and bone marrow.
Now, how much does that weigh when you have to carry that?
Well, that cooler weighs about 20 pounds.
Weighs about,
and of course and when you put the blood bags, depending on how much it is, will increase the weight. And I've tried 3 ways to Sunday to figure out how to put that thing on wheels, but I hadn't figured that out yet. So I just kind of either put it on my shoulder or prop it on my suitcase. It's a challenge getting it over in the overhead.
So, and you have to put it up overhead, 20 pounds over your head, up into now you had to didn't they put you through some type of a test to be able to do this in order to qualify to volunteer for Be the Match?
Well, it was, a background check and training. And at first the cutoff was 70. But then when they saw that there were people like me that got 70 and could still function in society, they changed it to 75.
Isn't that amazing?
Yeah, but part of the application process was, can you carry and can you lift a certain weight?
Yeah, because 20 pounds over your head is really challenging. People
it
think
really is when it's an awkward shape.
Yes. And then, so how many times a month do you travel? So you fly?
Yes.
Okay.
About 2 trips a month.
2 trips a month to any place in the United States, pretty much.
Wherever, you get trip requests, and then I'll look at it to see if I've got 3 days that I can block off to do a trip, because you have to go the day before, and then the day of the pickup and travel, and then come home the 3rd day. So, finding 3 days in a row, and
to be able to do that.
That's how I kind of do it, and then if there's something else coming up during a week, I'll know not to volunteer. You can do it every week if you wanted to.
Yeah. Yeah. And now you know, I mean, you know, because we tell you all the time, everybody at Think wants to be like Beverly when we get older. Like, you know, we say that, right?
Oh,
Because
I
you're
get energy from that.
because you're fully participating in life and you're embracing life, you know, as the years go by, right? Instead of
Right.
being a bystander. And I think that's a very big difference in your outlook, in your, you know, in terms of your mood, right? In
Yeah.
terms of seeing that, okay, I'm still a part of society, because a lot of people start to feel like they don't have a
Mhm.
purpose. Okay. And you have proven, you know, 100% that you have to put in the work, of course, right? To be
Yeah,
able to do
absolutely.
all of this. Yeah. Yeah. And that's a huge factor. So I would say one thing, you know, especially since, yes, you had that little injury with your disc, you know, you had that issue that we had to overcome, but you have never once, ever, ever, ever made excuses. And you were in that studio 3 times a week, even throughout COVID. Okay. And there's a lot of people who would use so many things as an excuse as to why they could not do something. But you, for us, I hope you know, at the studio, you are the epitome of, you know, stepping up to the plate, you
Well,
know,
thank you
and
very much for that compliment.
it's true. It's true. Because we say, well, if Beverly can do it, we can do it. You know, look at Beverly. Like, really, then nobody has any excuses. Like, they really have no excuses. Because you know, there's many things that are, you look, traveling alone on a flight as a woman, okay, going to places that are, you know, by yourself, and you do it, and you've done it throughout COVID. And I remember one day I asked, I said, are you flying now with COVID? You said, yes, I put my mask on, I have my hand sanitizer, I wipe everything down, and I go through. And yeah, you don't let anything stop you. And I think that's one of the most important things for people to acknowledge, that they can do that as well, is to not let these things in front of us be obstacles.
Well, when you talk about mindset,
Mm-hmm.
and I've been thinking about that recently, and so much of this is mindset, that I can or I can't, and my
Mm-hmm.
mindset is I can. I can.
Yes.
I'm healthy. I can travel. I'm doing all I can do with precautions. Actually, tomorrow I'm going for the vaccine, for the first vaccine.
Oh, okay.
But
Yeah.
because I'm old, enough.
Yes. So you get the vaccine, yes. And yeah, and you're not fearful. I mean, you're cautious, but you're not fearful, which is
You're
a
right.
lot. Yeah. What does your family say? Like, what does your son think now of you? Like, what is the difference in the change of relationship with the two of you?
Well, he's been sober for 4 years. And in this
Congratulations.
4 years, we really have come back together after, this relationship being kind of elusive for,
Mm-hmm.
a number of years while he was still using. And he has kind of dropped out of bodybuilding because he's got like shoulder injury. And so I'm surpassing him now. But yeah, and I love that. And he does too. He does too. He's very proud of me.
And now your husband, okay? So your husband, what is his perspective of you?
Hmm. Well, I mean, he's proud of me, but I want him to embrace it as
Yeah.
well. And he's just not. It's just the difference in our personalities. And, um, he's got some health issues too.
Mm-hmm.
And so I go that fine line between nagging him and then just, accepting that it just is going to be like this.
Yeah. Yeah. It's hard. It's a lot of women want their partners to partake with them, and they want them to share the journey with them. And some partners do, some husbands do,
Mm-hmm.
and some don't, you
Right.
know. So, but it's still important, I think, to, you know, stay in your lane, do what's best for you, let other people stay in their own lane, and, you know, but without, you know, like you said, the fine line between nagging and, yeah, it can be a challenge. But regardless, you're still, you know, you're owning your own situation and taking responsibility for your own situation, again, which is commendable, extremely commendable. What would you say to someone who was maybe in their 60s, who had never started to do this, you know, other than you know, it's never too late, what would you tell them about, like, if you don't do this, you'll regret, do you think they'll regret?
Um, well, I think they'll regret if they can look down the road, which is hard for somebody in their 40s to look down the road because it's a long road, than somebody that's 70 looking down the road and not having as many years left. But, you know, if you want the quality of life, you've got to take care of this body. You know, there's some things you can't control, but there are a lot of things and a lot more things that you can control.
Exactly.
And getting strong and working, I don't call it working out, I call it training. And you taught me that
yes.
in the first year in the garage. This is not a workout, this is not exercise, this is training. And that you can train an old body to do new things.
Yes, yes, you can. And I truly believe there's a big difference between getting older and getting old. Like, we're all going to get older, okay? But we can all control how we age to a large degree. And I think that's an important message, is that you can, offset a lot of the things that happen with aging, just by doing consistent maintenance on your body. And yes, lifting weights is consistent maintenance. And, lifting weights doesn't have to look like, what some people perceive it to be. To me, it's almost somewhat of a form of meditation for myself when I go in and lift weights. It's my own time with myself. It's one of the ways I relieve physical stress in my body and also mental stress. And I can't imagine not doing it. I imagine myself being, 80 years old on my front porch still doing deadlifts, but we'll see when that time comes. But no, this is a wonderful story, Beverly, because I think people too, like when they look back on the perspective, I think especially when they hear how you were, when you went through that divorce, and the perspective of what we see in the mirror at that time, and we can look back at, years after, and we look back and we're like, no, I thought I was this person, but I clearly wasn't. And we can see that perception and how it could be a bit warped, and now you've come to a place that I would say you're extremely content with yourself.
Right.
Yes. And do you remember the first thing you said to me? You remember you came in and you said, you held up your arm and you're like, Jennifer, how do I get rid of this? Do you remember that? And I was like, we build up this so it lifts it up. And things stop. But one of the things that notably changed on you is your skin texture, right? And that's simply just from increasing growth hormone from building muscle. It increases, it definitely improves the elasticity quality of skin, the texture of skin. Yeah. And you have visible muscles now instead of,
floppy skin.
Instead of floppy skin. Yes. Yes. Thank you so much for sharing. This is going to be such a good inspiration for so many women that say, you know what's the point? There's no point. And a lot of people say that, what's the point? There's a huge point. Every day is valuable. I think every day that we pay attention to ourselves is so important, to not put ourselves on the back burner, and just say, oh, it doesn't matter anymore, because it clearly does. And yes, and as you know, you are our inspiration in the studio.
Well, thank you very much. It's my pleasure.